video, I will demonstrate 6 different watercolor techniques using everyday household items. The materials you'll need include watercolor paper, brushes, watercolor paint, a palette, paper towel, and a cup of water. Some additional items you'll need to create some pretty cool, unique effects include alcohol, bleach, salt, and Saran wrap. I will first demonstrate the wet on wet technique. I'm going to dip my brush into the water and paint within my circle shape, making sure to cover the entire surface with a layer of water. I will then wet my brush and dip it in my watercolor paint. I will then begin to lightly tap and brush the surface of my paper. You'll see the paint slowly disperse and flow. I use this technique quite often and I find it very relaxing. I will now show you the wet on dry technique. For this one, I will go ahead and wet my brush and get a little paint and then go directly into painting my circle. You may need to reload on paint or water. Now I'm going to use alcohol to create a really cool effect. I'm going to wet my surface just like in the wet on wet technique and add some paint. You want to keep the area very wet before coming in with alcohol. I actually used a different paintbrush in order to not contaminate my watercolor brush. Dip your brush in the alcohol and allow it to drip onto the watercolor. Next, we are going to use bleach. Again, we're going to use the wet on wet technique. Make sure your surface has a generous amount of water and paint. Again, using a different brush, I'm going to dip my paintbrush into the bleach and lightly drip it on the surface. This technique creates a very subtle effect. Our next technique will involve the salt. Go ahead and apply a generous amount of paint and water. Before it dries, you are going to add a generous amount of salt. We will remove the salt when it dries. The last technique we are going to use today involves Saran wrap. Again, apply a generous amount of water and paint. Before the water and paint dry, go ahead and apply the Saran wrap to the surface. Lightly push down to secure it in place. Once dry, you can remove the salt and Saran wrap. You'll be left with a really cool design underneath. I hope you enjoyed learning these 6 watercolor techniques. Thank you for joining me today.